Good morning, this is Dave, Dave's Vintage Baseball Cards. How are you today? Today I'm going to do a little video on the T200 Fatima brand tobacco team cards. These were issued by Liggett Myers and Company in 1913. This total is 16 different cards. It's 8 from the National League, 8 from the American League. These cards measure 2 5/8 by 4 3/4 inches. Here's a picture of one that is ungraded. Get that close to the camera for you. Look at that. I'm going to have some still shots, close-ups later on in the video, but also you can see on the back there's an offer. Okay, we'll get into that in a moment also. There's a total of 369 different players that are shown on these, so these cards are loaded with Hall of Famers like Ty Cobb, non-Hall of Famers, Shoeless Joe Jackson, Christy Mathewson, even Jim Thorpe is on the New York Nationals. There's all kinds of interesting players on these. Okay, sticking with the players, here's the Philadelphia A's, manager Connie Mack, these are the Hall of Famers, Eddie Plank, Eddie Collins, Frank Home Run Baker, Chief Bender, and then you have the Chicago Cubs with Evers, Johnny Evers there, Roger Bresnahan, Evers of Tinkers, Evers to Chance. And the Dodgers, you have Zach Wheat and a very early picture of Casey Stengel. Then you go to the Giants, great team there. As I mentioned earlier, have Jim Thorpe, the Hall of Fame manager, John McGraw, Country Rube Marquard, Christy Mathewson. And then one of my favorite cards, the Cleveland Indians. There you have Nap LaJoie and, of course, the Shoeless Joe Jackson, who was also a member of the Black Sox in 1919. Go to the Phillies, have Pete Alexander, great Hall of Fame pitcher, and Epirixie. Then, of course, on the Pirates, you have manager Fred Clark and the great Honus Wagner. The Reds, you have Joe Tinker, who moved over from Chicago, and Mordecai Three-Finger Brown. Then we have the Red Sox with Tris Speaker. And then we go to an interesting team, the Chicago White Sox. You have Hall of Famer Ed Walsh, and then you have a handful of future Black Sox players, Buck Weaver, Eddie Seacott, and Ray Schultz. Now, as you can see from this card that I showed you, these are high gloss, very high gloss on these cards, and they're very thin. I don't know if you can really pick that up by this. They had a tendency to crack and chip, and in many cases you find these cards that are not completely intact. Now, the reason that I'm talking about these today is because of a recent deal. You know, we're always coming up with this, that, and the other thing. And this stack you see here, I picked up 29 of these from a party, and we sent them in to get them graded. And this here is, these are the graded cards. Get a phone call from a woman recently, and her father-in-law, her husband's father, started going through the attic and looking through stuff and found a stack of these. The story gets better than that, though. But anyway, there was just to roughly go through what was in the collection. It's a Boston American and a Brooklyn. There was a total of 7 different Chicagos, I think 3 Nationals and 4 Americans. Had the card that there was the most of, it's one of the tougher, more desirable cards. Here's 3 Cincinnati's, Cincinnati Redlegs. Would be this baby right here. Cleveland, this one here is in a PSA 5, which is considered a pretty high grade for this issue. This card, of course, has the Shoeless Joe Jackson and Nap LaJoie on it. To give you an idea of the grading on that, I don't have the exact numbers, but I'm going to get you pretty close here. I think with regard to PSA, out of 895 or so that they have graded prior to me sending in these 29, there was 1 that was graded and 8. I think 7 that might have been near mint 7s, a handful of about 15 or 20 6s, and that's it. So there's only about 30 cards out of all the cards they've graded that are higher than a 5. or 5.5 I should say. The Boston American that I have here is the 5. To go on with what we have here, there's the Clevelands, and then of course Philadelphia Nationals and Philadelphia Americans. We've got several of those. Then the New York National that I was talking about, this has the Thorpe on it. It's got Christy Mathewson, McGraw, and there's one or two mascots on this card. There's quite a few mascots throughout these team photos. So as I was saying, in 1913 they were issued by Liggett & Myers, 16 teams. It's not known why, but some of the teams are much more difficult to obtain than the other ones. For example, the Washington, there's 2 teams from St. Louis. The New York Americans are a little more difficult, so those are more expensive. Now, what I was mentioning to you earlier on the back of these cards, and this was where the story with this particular deal gets really, really nice, is a special offer. And what the special offer says is if you send in 40 of these back to the company, they will send you what they called a premium Fatima team card, which measured 13 by 21 inches. It was on, I believe, a harder cardboard backing, and I'm guessing you probably could pick the team that you wanted. So as you can imagine, since these things are so flimsy and rare and not too many of them survived, the team cards are extremely rare. Even though they were on the backing, I personally have only seen one of them, and I see them once in a while. They come up in auction, and they all go for a heavy premium. Now, the lady that sold me these mentioned as we were wrapping up the deal on these, she said, by the way, my husband's father has more stuff in the attic. He's got some of these team cards that are larger. I'm like, really? I said, well, I'm definitely interested in those. So we started to discuss that. We may have to update this video at a later date and include those, but for the time being, that part of the deal is still in limbo. But she did send these down, and I went ahead and I shot these out to PSA, and we've got 29 of them. And out of these 29, we got one 5.5, 4 5s, quite a few 4s and 3s, and there was maybe 2 1s and a small handful of 2s. I got Pittsburghs in 2s. There were a couple others that had some 1s and 2s in there, but overall, a really nice group of the Fatima cards. And as you know, here at Dave's Vintage Baseball Cards, we're always interested in some of the more difficult, obscure issues. So you can always come to our site and search around and expect to find stuff like this. And if you're watching this video and you happen to be like this woman and discovered some of these in the attic, or some of them somehow or another have gotten handed down to you and you want to get a little more information on them, or perhaps you want to sell them to us or have us sell them for you, you can see the number scrolling across the bottom right here. Go ahead and give us a call or send us an email, and we'll be more than happy to help you with these. So I hope you found the video on the Fatimas entertaining, and until next time, this is Dave from Dave's Vintage Baseball Cards, wishing you happy collecting and signing off.